The couch cushions had molded themselves to my spine after 3 weeks of restless nights. I pressed my face deeper into the scratchy fabric, inhaling the scent of my son Marvin's aftershave mixed with his wife Dorothy's vanilla candles, a combination that had become the smell of my exile. Through the thin apartment walls, I could hear them whispering in their bedroom, their voices low and urgent, discussing me as if I were a problem to be solved rather than the woman who had raised him. Please subscribe to my channel and comment where you're watching from. At 62, I never imagined I'd be sleeping on a fold-out couch in my own son's living room, my entire life reduced to 2 suitcases tucked behind the entertainment center. The divorce papers were still warm from the lawyer's printer when Marvin had offered me this temporary solution. His words, not mine. Temporary. As if my 30-year marriage dissolving overnight was a minor inconvenience that would sort itself out by Christmas. The morning light filtered through Dorothy's pristine white curtains, casting shadows across the hardwood floors I wasn't allowed to walk on with shoes. Every rule in this house was unspoken but absolute. Don't use the good towels. Don't touch the thermostat. Don't cook anything that might leave a smell. I had become a ghost haunting the edges of their perfect life. I heard Marvin's alarm buzz at precisely 6:15 a.m., followed by the sound of the shower. Dorothy would be next, with her 20-minute beauty routine that left the bathroom fogged with expensive moisturizers. By the time I was allowed my turn, there would be no hot water left. It was a small cruelty, perhaps unintentional, but it stung all the same. "Mom, you're up early." Marvin appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in a charcoal suit, his hair perfectly styled. At 35, he had his father's sharp jawline and my stubborn streak, though he seemed to have forgotten where he got the latter. "Couldn't sleep," I said, making instant coffee with water I'd heated in the microwave. The good coffee maker was off limits, a wedding gift from Dorothy's mother, Dorothy and I were talking, he said, loosening his tie, a nervous habit from childhood. "We think it might be time for you to start looking at more permanent arrangements." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Permanent arrangements? Senior living communities. They have great programs now. Social activities, meal plans. His voice trailed off as he watched my face. "Mom, you know this was always temporary." "Of course." I set my mug down with more force than necessary. "How silly of me to think I might stay until I got back on my feet." "Don't be like that. You know we want to help." "Help?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "Marvin, yesterday you drove Dorothy's mother to look at that new apartment complex on Maple Street, the one with the granite countertops." His Adam's apple bobbed. "That's different. Barbara has specific needs." "None. Zero. And she has a perfectly good house she doesn't want to sell. My specific need is a place to sleep that isn't your couch." Dorothy appeared then, her blonde hair in a sleek bun, dressed for her marketing job. She moved through the kitchen, avoiding my eyes as she prepared her protein smoothie. "Morning, Martha," she said without looking up. The use of my full name was a deliberate reminder that I was not family, but a guest who had overstayed her welcome. "Good morning, dear." I forced brightness into my voice. "Marvin was just telling me about your plans for your mother's new apartment." Dorothy's hand stilled on the blender. Mother needed a change of scenery. The house was too big after Daddy passed. "Of course. 3 bedrooms is enormous for one person." I glanced meaningfully around their 2-bedroom apartment. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Marvin cleared his throat. "Mom, about the baby's room." "What about it?" The spare bedroom they'd been using for storage had been cleared out last week, painted a soft yellow for their first child. Dorothy was barely showing, but they'd already started shopping for cribs. "Dorothy needs the space to set up the nursery. She's been stressed." "I wasn't suggesting I sleep in there permanently, Marvin. Just until I find somewhere else." My voice remained steady, but inside, something was cracking. "One night, in a real bed, maybe 2. Dorothy finally looked at me, her green eyes cool. "Martha, I think you're missing the point. This is about boundaries, about what's appropriate." "Appropriate," I repeated slowly. "And what would be appropriate for a woman whose husband of 30 years traded her in for his secretary?" Mom, no. Marvin, let me understand this. Your unborn child needs their room more than your homeless mother needs a bed. Is that correct? The color drained from his face. You're not homeless. You have options. Dad offered you the condo in Florida. And your father offered me a one-bedroom condo 2,000 miles away, contingent on me signing away my claim to half our assets. Very generous. Dorothy's smoothie word to life, drowning out whatever Marvin might have said. When the blender stopped, the silence felt heavier. If you wanted comfort, Marvin said finally, his voice barely a whisper, you should have stayed married to Dad. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at my son, this man I had carried, nursed, and loved unconditionally, and saw a stranger who could reduce my life to such a cruel oversimplification. I see, I said, setting my mug in the sink with exaggerated care. Thank you for clarifying where I stand. Mom, I didn't mean. But I was already walking away, back to my makeshift bed, my suitcases, my shame. Behind me, I heard Dorothy murmur something about tough love and enabling, words that followed me like smoke. I spent the day researching rentals on my phone, recalculating my meager savings. The divorce settlement was still being contested, my joint accounts frozen. I had exactly $847 in a personal account Walter never knew about. At 62, with no job and no credit, it might as well have been 8 cents. That evening, I walked to the corner market. The owner, Mr. Patel, was used to me buying single-serving portions of everything. 1 can of soup, 1 sleeve of crackers, 1 container of yogurt. At the checkout, I stared at the lottery display. Powerball was up to $3 million. Dardia. Feeling lucky today, Mrs. Harris? Mr. Patel asked with a kind smile. He was probably the only person in this neighborhood who treated me like I mattered. I looked at the crumpled $10 bill in my hand. Gas for job interviews, food for 2 days, or 1 quick pick, I heard myself say. Mr. Patel fed the ticket into the machine. 7, 14, 23, 31, 42, Powerball, 18. I stared at the random numbers. Good luck, he said, handing me my change. $8. All the money I had left. I walked back to the apartment as dusk gathered. The note on the counter said Marvin and Dorothy had gone to dinner at her mother's new place. Of course. I ate canned soup from a coffee mug and turned on the evening news. At exactly 11:17 p.m., the lottery numbers flashed across the screen. 7, 14, 23, 31, 42, Powerball, 18. I stared, certain I was hallucinating. I pulled out my ticket with trembling hands and compared the numbers again and again. Every single one matched. The ticket fluttered to the floor as I sank back into the couch. $3 million. After taxes, maybe $2 million. Enough to buy a house, enough to never sleep on a couch again. Enough to look my son in the eye and tell him exactly what I thought of his tough love. But as I sat there, only one thought echoed in my mind. If you wanted comfort, you should have stayed married to Dad. Then, no, Sonny. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, I would let them sleep peacefully, blissfully, unaware that the woman they dismissed as a burden had just become wealthier than they could ever dream of being. I picked up the ticket. The question wasn't what I would do with the money. It was what I would do with the power. I didn't sleep. How could I? The lottery ticket lay on the coffee table beside me like a loaded weapon. Every few minutes I'd check the numbers again against the screenshot on my phone. 7, 14, 23, 31, 42, Powerball, 18. The irony was almost too perfect. The same day my son told me I should have stayed married for comfort, I became more financially secure than any of them. At 5:30 a.m., Marvin's alarm buzzed. I forced myself to lie still, to play the role of the defeated woman. Just a little longer. He emerged from the bedroom and moved through the kitchen without acknowledging me, a habit he'd developed over the past 3 weeks. I had become furniture to him. Morning, I said softly, just to watch him flinch. Oh, Mom, didn't know you were awake. He fumbled with the coffee filter. Listen, About last night, what I said. You meant every word. I sat up. Don't insult us both by pretending otherwise. His jaw tightened. I'm trying to apologize. No, you're trying to manage your guilt. There's a difference. Dorothy appeared, her silk robe pristine. Good morning, Martha. The name still landed like a slap. How did you sleep? Wonderfully. I smiled, and something in my expression made her pause. Marvin, she said, did you remember to pick up those paint samples? I wanted to finalize the nursery colors. Already in the car, he replied, not looking at me. Mom, we need to talk about timelines. Dorothy's mother is coming to help with the baby preparations next month, and you'll need the living room. Man. Of course, I nodded calmly. Family should always come first. They exchanged a look, surprised by my reasonable tone. I'll start looking at places today. Might even have some good news by tonight. Good news. Dorothy's voice held a note of suspicion. A woman my age doesn't have many options, but I'm resourceful. You'd be surprised what opportunities exist when you're properly motivated. Marvin's coffee mug paused. Mom, you're not thinking of doing anything dramatic, are you? I laughed. A sound I hadn't made in weeks. Dramatic? Marvin, I'm 62. The most dramatic thing I do is buy the expensive laundry detergent. But as I gathered my things, I caught Dorothy watching me in the hallway mirror, her green eyes narrow. She sensed something had shifted. After they left for work, I called the lottery office. Mrs. Harris, congratulations, the woman on the phone said. We'll need you to come in person. Yes, I said, my voice steady. What should I bring? Photo ID, social security card, and the winning ticket. And you might want to consider whether you'd like the lump sum or annuity payments. Vingarn. Lump sum. I didn't have time for 30 years of gradual payouts. I needed immediate, undeniable power. The lottery office was a sterile government building. I sat in the waiting room, my winning slip sealed in a plastic bag. Martha Harris, a man in a cheap suit, called. I'm Jim Martinez, claim supervisor. Congratulations. The next 2 hours were a blur of paperwork. The lump sum after taxes will be approximately $1.80 million, Jim explained. We can have the first installment processed within 5 business days. Perfect, I signed with a steady hand. And Mr. Martinez, I'd prefer to keep this confidential for now. Of course. You have 60 days before you're required to claim publicly. More than enough time. I walked out of that building, a millionaire. Nothing had changed visibly, but inside, the weight of powerlessness had lifted, replaced by something harder and infinitely more dangerous. Instead of returning to the apartment, I drove to the public library and researched real estate. I had been an economics major before marriage, skills I thought were long buried. By evening, I had identified 3 potential properties. One made my pulse quicken, a 40-acre plot with an old farmhouse, being sold by a family desperate to settle an estate. It was perfect, remote, large, and priced at $300,000, leaving me plenty of capital. Marvin was already home when I returned. How was the job hunting? He asked without looking up. Productive, I said, setting my purse down. I might have found something. Oh. Dorothy's tone was cautiously hopeful. What kind of work? Consulting. A company needs someone with my background to evaluate investment opportunities. Not entirely a lie. I might need to travel for a few days, look at some properties the company is considering. Properties. Dorothy's interest sharpened. Agricultural ventures, sustainable farming, animal rehabilitation, growing markets apparently. I took a bite of cold Chinese food. The position comes with housing, company property. I watched their faces. Relief warred with suspicion in Marvin's expression, while Dorothy looked almost disappointed, as if she'd been looking forward to evicting me. Mom, that's great news. I'm happy for you. Are you? I met his eyes. Because you seemed pretty convinced yesterday that I'd made irreversible mistakes. He looked uncomfortable. I was frustrated. I said things I didn't mean. No, Marvin. You said things you meant but wished you hadn't said aloud. There's a difference. Dorothy cleared her throat. The important thing is that you're moving forward, finding independence. Independence. I savored the word. Yes, that's exactly what I'm finding. That night, I lay on the couch for the last time. Tomorrow, I would drive out to see the farmhouse. Within a month, I would be transformed. But transformation wasn't enough. Justice required consequences. I thought about the caretaker's cottage I'd seen in the listing photos. A small, basic structure, originally for hired help. Perfect for housing people in need of shelter. Perfect for teaching lessons about gratitude. Perfect for the justice that was coming. The farmhouse sat like a forgotten dream at the end of a winding gravel road. I pulled up in Marvin's borrowed Honda. The real estate agent, a thin woman named Carol, was already waiting. Mrs. Harris, welcome to Meadowbrook Farm. The family's motivated to sell quickly. The house needed work, but its bones were solid. I walked through the rooms, cataloging every possibility. Tell me about the outbuildings, I said. Well, there's the old barn, and over there, she pointed to a small structure. That's the caretaker's cottage. I walked toward the cottage, my heart pounding. It was perfect in its simplicity. A tiny living room, a kitchen with ancient appliances, 2 small bedrooms, and a bathroom that had seen better days. It was exactly what someone who had lost everything deserved. How quickly could we close? I asked. 30 days, but with cash. Carol tilted her head. 20 days. All cash, no inspections, as is. Her eyes widened. Mrs. Harris, are you sure? Endura. I soon. Dindi. Andana. I'm sure. I handed her my new business card. Have the contracts drawn up. 3 weeks later, I stood in my own kitchen. The transformation had been swift. I'd hired contractors to repair the barn and install fencing. The animal rescue had been my ex-husband's idea, ironically. He'd sneered that I should go rescue some stray dogs since I was so good at taking in hopeless cases. I'd filed it away as inspiration. Within a month, Meadowbrook had its first residents. 3 horses, 2 goats, and a revolving population of shelter dogs and cats. I hired Gloria, a 23-year-old veterinary student, to help. She lived in the cottage's smaller bedroom in exchange for work. Mrs. Harris, the new fencing looks great, Gloria said one morning. These guys are so much happier. Everyone deserves space to breathe, Gloria. Everyone deserves to feel safe. I hadn't spoken to Marvin in 6 weeks. He'd called twice, but I let them go to voicemail. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Dorothy's pregnancy was progressing well, that they had finished the nursery. They were happy, settled, secure. What came next, more satisfying. The first sign of trouble was Marvin's LinkedIn post. Exploring new opportunities, corporate speak for I've been fired. Soon after, Gloria mentioned a stressed young man in an expensive suit asking about me at the hardware store. What did you tell him? I asked. That I'd never heard the name. You're always Mrs. Harris to me. Smart girl. Next, he hired a private investigator. The man was competent enough to trace my movements to the lottery office and the property purchase, but not the source of my wealth. 2 months after I disappeared from his couch, Marvin finally found me. I was brushing Thunder, a massive black gelding, when I heard a car struggling up the drive. Marvin's silver sedan. I continued brushing, my movements steady. Mom, his voice carried across the pasture, uncertain. I didn't turn around. Mom, I know you can hear me. Finally, I looked up. Marvin stood at the fence, still in his business clothes, though it was Saturday. He looked like a man who hadn't been sleeping. Hello, Marvin. Mom, what the hell is going on? You disappeared. You're not answering calls, and now I find you on some farm playing with horses? I set down the brush and walked slowly toward the fence. This is my home. These are my animals. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Your home, his voice cracked. Mom, how are you affording this? Where did you get that kind of money? The same place anyone gets money, Marvin. I earned it. Doing what? You haven't worked in 30 years. I've been working all my life. I just wasn't getting paid for it. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, I know we had some difficult conversations before you left. Before I left, the words came out sharp. Marvin, you threw me out. You told me I should have stayed married if I wanted comfort. I was frustrated. The situation was complicated. For you. For me, it was quite simple. My son chose his wife's comfort over his mother's basic dignity. That's not fair. I spun around, and he actually stepped back. Fair? You want to discuss fair? Let's talk about your mother-in-law's 3-bedroom apartment while I slept on your couch. Let's talk about asking for one night in a real bed, and being told I'd chosen my circumstances. Mom, please. I'm not finished. My voice cracked like a whip. Let's talk about the 27 years of birthday parties I hosted. The college tuition I insisted your father pay. The wedding I helped plan, even though Dorothy made it clear I was an inconvenience. Marvin's face had gone pale. I know you sacrificed. Sacrificed? I laughed, a sound with no warmth. Marvin, I didn't sacrifice. I invested. 35 years in a human being I believed would love me enough to offer more than a couch. And you're not here because you love me. You're here because your comfortable little world is falling apart. I walked back to the fence. Tell me, how's the job search going? His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Oh, you think I don't know, Marvin. I know about Henderson and Associates letting you go. I know about the botched Morrison account. I know about the apartment lease you can't afford and the credit cards you're maxing out. Did you know? How could you possibly? The same way I know that Dorothy's mother isn't paying for that new apartment. The same way I know you co-signed a loan you shouldn't have. Information is just another form of currency, son. And unlike you, I've learned to spend mine wisely. Behind him, a U-Haul truck pulled up the drive. Dorothy climbed out, her pregnancy now clearly visible. Mom, we need help, Marvin said, the words ripping out of him. The apartment's gone. The bank called our loan. We have nowhere else to go. None. I watched Dorothy approach, her eyes taking in the property, the animals, the prosperity. She looked directly at me. Hello, Martha. Hello, Dorothy. I turned to Marvin. And you came here because you're family, he said desperately. Because despite everything, you're still my mother. I looked at them both, homeless and desperate, expecting the woman they'd dismissed to save them. Think of your grandson, Dorothy said, her hand on her rounded belly. I did think of him. I thought of the child who would learn about family loyalty from these two. I thought of the values he would absorb about how you treat people when they're vulnerable. That's when I smiled and walked toward the cottage where Gloria was watching. Gloria, could you show our guests to their accommodations? Gloria descended from the cottage porch with the easy grace of someone who belonged. She nodded to Marvin and Dorothy with polite disinterest. Mrs. Harris? She asked, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Gloria, this is my son Marvin and his wife Dorothy. They'll be staying in the cottage. I paused. Temporarily, of course. Dorothy's face cycled through hope, confusion, and finally horror as she really looked at the small structure. Martha, that's very generous, but we were hoping. You were hoping for what? Exactly? The main house? My bedroom? Marvin stepped forward. Mom, we're grateful for anything. Of course you are. I walked toward the cottage, gesturing for them to follow. Come, let me show you your new home. The cottage's front door opened into a living room, barely large enough for a threadbare couch. The kitchen was visible, with its yellowed appliances and chipped counters. It's cozy, Dorothy said weakly. It has everything you need, I replied. Running water, electricity, heat. I opened cabinets to reveal mismatched dishes. Gloria's been using the second bedroom, but she's moving her things to the main house. You'll have both bedrooms to yourselves. Marvin peered down the narrow hallway. Both bedrooms? Well, one's quite small. Probably just right for a nursery, though, when the baby comes. I smiled at Dorothy's pale face. The tour continued through the cramped bathroom and the 2 bedrooms. Everything was clean but worn, functional but without luxury. "This is temporary," Marvin said, trying to convince himself. "Just until I find another job." "I'm sure it will. There are few house rules," I said. Dorothy sank onto the couch. "Rules? This is a working farm. We start at 5:00 a.m. No loud music after 9:00 p.m. No unauthorized visitors. No alcohol. And everyone contributes to the work. No exceptions." "Uninterrupted. Work?" Marvin's voice climbed. "Mom, Dorothy's 7 months pregnant. Then I suppose you'll have to work twice as hard, unless you'd prefer other accommodations." The silence stretched. The U-Haul truck sat outside, loaded with the remnants of their life. They had nowhere else to go. "The work starts tomorrow," I continued. "Gloria will show you the routine. Feeding, mucking stalls, fence repairs. It's honest work. Good for building character." Dorothy's composure finally cracked. "Martha, this is insane. We're not farmhands." "Marvin Hyde, a career," I corrected gently. "Now he has an opportunity to learn the value of physical labor." I turned to my son, who stared at me like a stranger. "Marvin, do you remember when you were 8 and wanted that expensive bicycle? You mowed lawns all summer to earn half the money. You understood what things cost." "Mom, that was different. I was a child learning a lesson." "And what are you now?" The question hung in the air. "'Cause 2 months ago, you were a man who told his homeless mother she should have stayed married for comfort. Today, you're a man asking that same mother for shelter. So tell me, Marvin, what exactly are you now?" "Man, woman, is it crime?" His face flushed red. "I'm your son." "Yes, you are. And that's the only reason you're standing in this cottage instead of sleeping in your car." I moved to the door. "Gloria will bring you some basic supplies. You can use the washer and dryer in the main house twice a week." "Wait." Dorothy struggled to her feet. "What about medical care? I have appointments." "There's a Honda Civic in the barn. Reliable transportation. You can use it for necessities." Marvin's mouth fell open. "You have a car just sitting in the barn." "I have several things you don't know about, Marvin. I've discovered I'm quite good at acquiring assets when properly motivated." "Nay, come." That evening, I sat on my front porch with a glass of wine, watching them unload their belongings. "This is better than cable," Gloria said, settling beside me. That woman's face when she saw the kitchen. "Dorothy's accustomed to certain standards. This will be educational." Through the cottage windows, I could see them trying to fit their king-sized bed in a room designed for a double. "Mrs. Harris," Gloria said carefully, "can I ask why you're doing this? I mean, they're family." "Are they?" I sipped my wine. "Gloria, what makes someone family? Biology or the way they treat you when you're vulnerable?" Maybe, Madame Sir." She was quiet. "My parents threw me out when I came out. My girlfriend's mom took me in, helped me apply for college. She's more family to me than the people who share my DNA." "Exactly. Family is what you build." Marvin appeared on the cottage porch, staring out at the darkening fields like a man contemplating escape routes he didn't have. "He looks lost," Gloria observed. "He is. For the first time, Marvin is facing consequences." My phone buzzed. A text from Dorothy. "Hey Martha, this is Dorothy. Could we talk privately?" I showed Gloria, who snorted. "Oh, this should be good. Want me to make popcorn?" "Yarn. That won't be necessary, but do keep an eye on them. I suspect this is just the beginning." I walked to the cottage. Dorothy met me at the door, her composure gone. "Martha, we need to talk." I stepped inside, noting how their furniture overwhelmed the small space. "This isn't settling. This is," she gestured helplessly. "This is punishment. I offered you shelter when you had none. Many people would consider that generosity. You know exactly what this is." Her green eyes blazed. "You're humiliating us, making us live like what, Dorothy?" Like people who don't have granite countertops. Like women whose marriages have ended and find themselves dependent on the kindness of family. She looked away. Tell me, I continued, how does it feel to sleep somewhere that isn't really yours, to worry about whether you're welcome or just tolerated? Point made, she whispered. Oh, I don't think it is. I spent 3 weeks learning those feelings. You'll have much longer to truly understand them. Marvin appeared in the doorway. Mom, how long are you planning to keep us here? Keep you? I stood. Marvin, no one is keeping you anywhere. You're free to leave any time. The silence that followed was answer enough. I thought so. Breakfast is at 6:00 a.m. Gloria will show you the feeding routine. We'll see how quickly you adapt. As I walked back, I heard Dorothy's muffled sobs. A small, weak part of me wanted to go back. But comfort, as my son had taught me, was something you earned, and they were just beginning to understand the price. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen watching the sunrise, a cup of real coffee warming my hands. Through the window, I could see Marvin mucking out Thunder's stall, his soft business hands now calloused from honest work. Morning, Mrs. Harris. Gloria appeared in the doorway, baby Willie gurgling in her arms. At 3 months, he was a beautiful child. Dorothy's still exhausted. I told her I'd take the first feeding. It was remarkable how Gloria had assumed the role of surrogate grandmother. She had been the one to drive them to the hospital when Dorothy went into labor 6 weeks early from stress. I had visited once, bringing a casserole and a handmade quilt. Dorothy had cried when she saw it, tears of exhaustion and gratitude. Mrs. Harris, she'd whispered, holding Willie. I know what this is, what you're doing, but he's innocent. Yes, I'd agreed. That's why he has a roof over his head. What he doesn't have is a grandmother who will enable his parents to take that love for granted. Man. Now watching Marvin work, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. He's getting stronger, Gloria said, following my gaze. Both physically and otherwise. She was right. The soft executive had been replaced by someone leaner, steadier. Yesterday, he asked about expanding the rescue program. Did he? I sipped my coffee, unsurprised. And Dorothy's been helping with the bookkeeping. She's actually quite good with numbers. I think she's trying to prove she belongs here. Through the window, Marvin emerged from the stall and walked toward the cottage. He paused, noticed my silhouette, and raised his hand in a tentative wave. I didn't wave back, but I didn't turn away. They're different people than they were 6 months ago, Gloria said quietly. We all are. The woman who'd begged for a bed was gone. Replaced by someone who understood that love without respect is manipulation. Mrs. Harris, Gloria asked, what happens now? They've learned their lesson. What's the endgame? It was a fair question. What do you think should happen? Gloria was quiet. I think some people deserve second chances, she said finally. But I also think second chances have to be earned. And you think they've earned one? I think they're trying. Marvin apologized to me last week for the way they treated you. He said he'd been thinking about how they made you feel invisible. This surprised me. He had never apologized to me. What did you tell him? That apologies are nice, but actions matter more, and that it wasn't me he needed to apologize to. Smart girl. A knock at the back door interrupted us. It was Dorothy, holding a manila folder. Come in, I called. She entered hesitantly. Good morning. I was hoping we could talk, all three of us. She placed the folder on the table. I've been working on the rescue's finances. This place is incredible, but more than that. She pulled out a second sheet. You've created something sustainable. With the right investments, this could become a major regional facility. I studied the papers, impressed. She had identified cost savings and growth opportunities I'd missed. This is excellent work, I said. Thank you. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Martha, I know why we're here. I know we deserved it. Marvin and I have been talking about what kind of parents we want to be for Willie. Nodding. And what kind is that? The kind who teach him that family means showing up. The kind who model gratitude instead of entitlement. I leaned back, studying her. Those are nice words, Dorothy. I know. That's why I wanted to show you this. She pulled out a final document. Marvin and I want to deed the cottage to you permanently. We've been living there for 6 months and we'd like to continue if you'll have us. Not as family who takes advantage, but as employees who earn their place. It was a formal lease agreement, offering their services as full-time farm managers for housing and modest salaries. Why? I asked. Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. Because you gave us more than shelter. You gave us the chance to become people we could respect. People Willie could be proud of. Through the window, I saw Marvin loading hay bales. There's something else, Dorothy said quietly. He talks to Willie about you every night. He tells him stories about his grandmother, how smart you are, how strong you are. He's never said it to your face, but he knows what he lost. Gloria stood. I'll give you two some privacy. When we were alone, Dorothy reached out and touched my hand. Martha, I can't undo what we did, but I can promise that if you give us the chance, we'll spend the rest of our lives proving we've learned from it. I looked down at our joined hands. 2 women who'd started as adversaries. The cottage is yours, I said finally. Not as a gift, but as what you've earned. Her tears came then, months of held-back gratitude and relief. But Dorothy, I continued, and she looked up. If you ever make me feel invisible again, if you ever treat my love as something you're entitled to, this arrangement ends. Are we clear? Crystal clear. And your husband? He knows. He's been waiting for me to find the courage to have this conversation. He said to tell you he's ready to apologize whenever you're ready to hear it. I stood, walking to the window to watch my son work. He moved with dignity earned through sweat and humility. The soft executive was gone, replaced by someone I could respect. Tell Marvin, I said without turning around, that apologies are nice, but I'm more interested in the man he's becoming than the man he used to be. Outside, thunder whinnied, and Marvin looked up, smiling at the horse that had once terrified him. 6 months ago, my son had been afraid of everything that required actual work. Now, he was afraid of nothing except losing what he'd finally learned to value. That, I thought, as Dorothy gathered her papers and headed back to the cottage where her family waited, was exactly as it should be.